Guys, we are back after slight technical difficulties on my end with Angela McGregor. We were talking about assessment tools and understanding that assessment tools are compliant, but not necessarily always usable. And I guess just helping RTOs find that balance. And so having been a trainer, run an RTO, seeing standards over the periods of time, writing assessment tools, you've probably got a pretty good system for striking that balance across everything. I think there's a lot of RTOs out there that really struggle, and we do see kind of super usable tools, not compliant, maybe, I guess, super compliant tools, not necessarily usable, and helping RTOs from a policy perspective, an operations perspective, an assessment perspective, finding that balance. And you were saying before, like there's a lot of RTOs that don't really understand the standards that we have now. And so potentially, with these new set of standards coming in, it's an opportunity to kind of go, what do we know? What do we not know? What do we need to do better? And you do focus a lot on RTO registrations. So when you are taking clients through that process, what are the biggest challenges for you when working with clients to bring them into this RTO? Because I think everyone looks at it and goes, I can train, but how do you take them from I can train to I can run an RTO?
I would say probably one of the biggest challenges, especially work with a lot of industry organisations. So they're industry based, they want to then add an RTO to their offering. I think one of the biggest challenges is for them to understand just how serious this all is and how much is required in the application. So I don't think that there's a lot of other businesses in Australia that we need to jump through so many hoops. I know there's childcare, aged care, they are in the health, but there's not a lot of businesses that requires this level of preparation before you can start the business, and then approval and the delays and the time in doing so. And I think that for most of my initial registrations, for them to understand just what is involved and that there is that requirement that we set up a whole system that will run from marketing and advising people of what the offering is that students can enroll in through to the completion and all that is involved in between. So I think that's the hardest thing for most people to initially understand. And then just how seriously ASQA take compliance is another thing for a lot of them to understand. I remember one client that probably just made me shake my head the most, or probably two. And I read the business plan and I said, look, you're doing automotive training. You've mentioned you've got artificial intelligence in the workshop, and they're going to ask you, how is that working? And this was quite a few years ago. And I said, how are you using artificial intelligence in the workshop? It's in your business plan. Oh, we're not, but it sounds good. They're going to be impressed. And I said, no. We have to make sure everything we do aligns to everything you will do. And then it's all based on fact. We can't impress them unless we do have AI. And he said, no, we really like it. We like it. It's got to stay in there. So then the person who wrote the business plan was not the person who was sat in front of the camera for the Zoom meeting. So what was the opening question? Read the business plan. Tell us more about AI and how you're using that in your automotive workshop.
Crickets.
We had nothing. So that was one example of one not understanding just how serious this all is and how important it is that we put everything together, because there are no coaching opportunities from ASQA. There's no opportunity for ASQA to jump online and say, look, you put in a really nice application here, but it's missing all of this. So it would like to help you do that. And they just don't, most clients don't understand that. I had another one, and this one is, I understand why it's confusing, but it was a childcare RTO. Everything was ready except assessment. They purchased assessment. I said, we need to review them. We need to make sure that they are compliant, because the majority of us purchased assessment off the shelf is not compliant. And I went into the reasons. No. We paid for these. We paid good money for these. They have to be compliant. And I said, but they don't. There is no requirement for the authors of these materials to make these materials compliant. There's no regulatory body. There's no comeback from ASPA to them. It's going to come back on you. No.
Modern contracts actually say we're providing you with tools. It's your responsibility to contextualize, to add the benchmarks, to do this, this, and this. And it's like, read your contracts. Your contracts, a lot of the time, actually say you've got to do all of this stuff after the fact. Like, we talk about that with people all the time.
And it makes sense to you and I, but it doesn't make sense to the majority of people who are buying training material off the shelf. They're thinking, well, they've got the unit code and the title, therefore they must meet the requirements of the unit. And as you and I both know, there's no way that you can just take something that's off the shelf and expect it to fit the way that you're going to train and assess. But for someone who's brand new to it all and that sort of thing, it was very confusing. And sure enough, they were very surprised when they received a non-compliant report. And we had 20 days to fix those assessments. So, yeah.
And then it's the cost that flows on from that.
Absolutely. But also, I think that it's really important for RTOs to understand that when we rectify under those sorts of conditions, it's not the best outcome. It's usually, right, let's just do this so it meets the requirements. Whereas if we did it prior to the application going in, we would have had industry consultation, we would have had a lot more involvement, we would have had the advantage of time. But when you're doing it under pressure like that, the focus is, what you were talking before about assessment, is on compliance, not necessarily on usability or user friendliness.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also means you're just not really thinking about the audience. You know, you're not thinking about the trainers, you're not thinking about the students, you're not thinking about the experience that you're going to create. You're thinking about, here's the 3 points they've raised in the audit report that we've got to address.
And that's what we have to do at that point, but it's not quality moving forward either. So, and that's the same with any rectifications. I find that any rectifications need to be revisited. But I do want to revisit that point that you were talking about, the assessment, when you were saying about the 13 pages, etc. One thing that I am seeing a lot of is a move towards auto marking, especially with online training and assessment. And I'm finding that the auto marking isn't getting down to the depth of the requirements for the units, particularly the knowledge. It's just multiple choice, that sort of thing. So that is something that I'm seeing a lot of that is concerning. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
Really, I mean, it's actually really interesting. I hate multiple choice for anything other than like AQF2. We kind of have a general rule in NOI. If the client really wants multi-choice, we'll look at it, but we'll only look at it for AQF1, AQF2, because at that stage, most of the time it's like the criteria is identify anyway, rather than it's things like explain, discuss, etc. One of the interesting things, though, is we've been building an AQF8 course with an organisation, and it's like very heavily in finance and very obscure areas of finance. And we've actually had ChatGPT checking their answers and vice versa. Because we were talking with them the other day, and we were like, yeah, but ChatGPT is getting the answers right. And they were like, no, our questions are far too complex, far too complicated. There's no way it can get it right. And we literally like showed them, we put the question in and we produced it to them, and they were like, oh my God.
Because it's right. Accessing information that is there for it to access.
But this is literally like, here's a set of here's the financial information, here's the legislative standards, here's the situation that we're providing. Please explain whether or not this law is applicable in this context, and give your reasons why. And so even I was like, no, the complexity of the question, there's no way the bot will get it right. One, the bot got it right, but then two, we had done 2 example responses. We put that into the into the bot and said, can you grade this for us and let us know? And it came back with literally like, so we said to the trainer, we're like, well, how would you mark each of these? And they were like, yeah, good. They could tighten up on this. Yeah, good. And we were literally like, oh my God, the AI has come up with the same thing. So I think once it gets to a point that AI can interact with the questions like that, I 100% think that it will be one of those things. I've started trying to take like full assessments from like my AQF3 units completed by students, putting them into ChatGPT and seeing how accurate it is, like what my assessors have come up with versus what ChatGPT is coming up with. And it's getting really, really good at like picking those little bits and pieces where the short answer, is missing a gap. And sometimes it's picking it up where my assessors aren't picking it up. So I think where it's going to be in like maybe 3 or 4 years time, when we will have ChatGPT sitting in the vast majority of student management systems, it's going to be great. And I honestly see within 5 years, the vast majority of theory assessments are going to be completely marked by AI. I don't think that they will be getting marked by people. And I think that people will be focusing on building skills and assessing skills and evidencing skills. And that's where the focus is going to be over that period of time, because you'll be able to interact with the bots, ask them questions, get the right responses and things like that. Where it is now, though, in relation to auto marking of short assessments is well far from ChatGPT, well far. And I don't think that I think it's very, very, very difficult to design good multi-choice questions that actually allow the student to demonstrate the breadth and depth of the vast majority of knowledge evidence.
Right. However, it's interesting that you say that about your feelings towards multiple choice, because I have felt that way too. But I have been incorporating some multiple choice into the higher level qualifications because you cannot get those answers from ChatGPT. So you can't just put the question in. They actually need to read the question or the case study and the multiple choice options. And I'm finding that it's one of the ways to authenticate that students actually done it rather than just having ChatGPT do it.
Yeah.
So
it's the purpose. It's the purpose of why you're including it is interesting, though, because you're not really including it to kind of go, this is my primary form of evidence against knowledge evidence X, Y, or Z.
No, that's not the primary form for including it. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's interesting. Although I would be interested to see, as I said, I've been very surprised. ChatGPT 3.5 can't do a lot, but we've got enterprise subscription for 4. And what that's now been capable of from that assessment perspective is bordering on scary, really incredible, very mixed feelings.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So yeah, it is quite, I think that I've said it a few times now. I'm like, I just think within 5 years, almost all theory training and assessment is going to be one-on-one with a learner and a bot, and the bot will take them in that direction. And let's just really hope we get the structure and the bias behind that correct, because the current bias I think is problematic. But I think skills, and that's why I think, AI works great with vet, because we're all about skills, like that's our thing. Way more so than in higher ed, way more so than in, primary school and things like that.
Absolutely.
We're all about skills. So if our trainers can actually spend more time building skills with learners, practicing skills with learners, assessing skills with learners, I think learners will be happier. I think our trainers will be happier. And if we can automate a lot of the other stuff, I'm open to that. I'm just, having a son that's going into an electrical apprenticeship and another one that's either going to be doing something with animals or demolition, one of the two. I'll be very I will be very closely monitoring to make sure that like the values that then go behind that are not too conscriptive, I guess.
It'd be interesting to see where it goes.
For sure. All right. Well, if you're cool, we will take a very quick break and then we will come back because, as you said, we want to get onto self-assurance. And I want to talk about this with you because I'm very, very keen to hear your thoughts. Guys, this has been part 2 of the interview. If you do want to follow Angela, you can find her links below on LinkedIn. You can also take a link to her website, which is super easy to remember, www.rtoconsultant.com.au. So make sure you do follow her on LinkedIn. She puts up a lot of really interesting, she makes a lot of interesting comments and posts, and it's good to be following people who, have been here, seen all this before. And as we said, like to keep things nice and calm. I think that's, it's always a nice thing to look for in your consultants is like, keep calm and carry on. Hope you guys are enjoying this series. We will see you guys again in 3 days. Angela, I will see you in a couple of minutes. My name is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services.